What is up, everybody? Today's show got a real treat for you. He's been in corporate. Now he's in real estate, which I'm really excited to chat with him about today. He's a Michigan boy. He's into fast cars. He's also a four-wheeling off-roading son of a gun. And I know he does a lot more than that. And I'm thrilled to have him on today. Teo Bogdan, welcome to GLE.
Thank you, Phil. Honored to be here, man.
What's cracking, man?
Nothing, man. Just, woke up in the morning, got some workouts in.
There you go.
Some breakfast, ready for the day,
Good for you, brother. Good for you. So, Teo, tell me about your story, man. I know you've been through a lot. You're doing a lot right now in real estate. How did we get to where you are today?
So it all started, I think my story really starts back when I was 10 years old and my parents decided to move to America, right? Because if it wasn't for that, then I don't know, I'd be herding cows or something, right? Who knows? But so that's kind of like where it all started, right? We moved to America. I knew like zero English, which, some people it's like hard to believe because I don't really have an accent and everything. But anyway, typical, immigrant parents.
Where'd you move from?
Romania. Yep. And it's the country that looks like a golden fish. What's like goldfish? Like
yeah.
Streets.
I never heard that before.
Yeah, it's in Europe. It's a sweet country.
Yeah.
But anyway, so typical immigrant parents, right? They wanted me to go to school. So I went for engineering because, I was always a car guy. I always liked cars, always liked all that stuff, taking stuff apart, putting it together. So went to school, wasn't really a fan of school, but I was like, hey, this is what I got to do to, make it or be successful or whatever. Right. So I did that. And next thing was I pretty much got into corporate. I got a job as I think it was a design engineer at a Japanese company. And man, like I didn't even graduate college and I got that job. They're like, all right, you need to graduate. Like we're going to hire you as an engineer, but you need to, you need to still graduate just because there was an open position. I was already an intern. It just like worked out. Right. So it was sweet. I was able to pay for a lot of my college that way. But as soon as I got in there, I was like, man, I don't think this is for me. Like I saw everyone else walking around. I was like, this is going to be another 30, 40 years of this. Like all these guys look miserable. No one's happy. And the other thing was like, I look out in the parking lot, like no one's driving cool cars. No one's driving like nothing,
right.
Nothing cool is happening here. Right. So that kind of got me into like, all right, let's just start like digging down and like reading books and like, figuring out like what I want to do. Cause I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Sure.
When I was in high school, I had a little shop, souping up cars, so I really like doing that. I was like, maybe I can do that, so I looked into a bunch of businesses and then I stumbled across real estate and then I was like, whoa, this makes a lot of sense, and didn't waste any time. And I think by that time I like graduated and I started, working full time and I kind of just jumped in, my friends were buying houses and living in them. So I was like, well, I'll just keep living at home. I'll buy this house. I'll rent it out. Worst comes to worst, it doesn't work out, I'll just move into it. Right. I bought in a sweet area where it was cool. Right. Obviously I looked at the numbers to make sure all that worked, but
sure.
I bought that first place and I remember I bought it. It didn't need any work. I just literally bought it. I don't even think I had it cleaned. Like as soon as we like closed on it, I had it like listed on Zillow for rent. It leased up super quick.
Wow.
And I think the numbers, I think my mortgage and insurance and stuff was like $1,200 a month. And I ended up renting it out, I think that first year for like $1,700.
Nice.
So I was like,
it's a little cash flow.
Yeah. I like was leaving there. I was like, why am I going to work? Like, this is stupid. Like I'm sitting here 40 hours a week, miserable, stressed out, like all this stuff. And like, I got a few more of these, like 5, 6, 8 of these places making me $500 a month. I don't need to go to work. Like, screw this work. Let's buy like 10 more of these, So that's kind of like, I don't know. I think that's like how real estate starts, right? You just like, you kind of get that first win. Well, I guess it either starts or ends, right? Because I know a lot of people have had bad not not impressions, but first experiences.
Yeah. I mean, if you get some bad renters that trash your place your first time, you're like, man, I don't want to deal with that again. Right.
Right.
I'm sure you've gone through that at some point.
Oh yeah. A lot of it. But luckily it wasn't the first one, right? You want your first one to be good.
To be
so you're all like happy and fluffy. Cause like, I don't know, like a lot of stuff, like there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens when you deal with other people. Right.
Yeah.
So when you're like a few places in, then it's like, whatever. Right. It's just like part of the game. But when it's your first one, you don't want that like bad taste in your mouth. Right.
How old were you when you did that first deal?
I was 24, I think.
Okay,
I was
so young.
20. I should have been 23. So like before I went down the rabbit hole I got my Corvette, and that was like my car that I wanted after I graduated.
There you go.
And the story behind that is I'd work all morning at my engineering job, and then at night I'd go to night classes. So coming out of night classes, there was this guy that had the exact Corvette that I wanted. Jetstream blue, C6, Z06, and it would sit in front of the college every night. And I'm like, man, I'm like doing this so I can buy the stupid car. Mm-hmm. So the car also played into like me, like looking out the window, like, all right, like I want more than this car. I want like better stuff. I want cooler stuff. I want faster stuff. Right. So anyway,
that's one thing, man. I wish I'd have learned, I remember I drove a 95 Toyota Avalon that I bought off my grandparents. And I drove that, all through my college days. So this was up through 2012. I lived at home for a couple of years, when I got to work, because I was kind of on a rotational thing. And so I was still driving that 95 Toyota Avalon, man, until I was like 25 years old. Then my little brother needed a car when he was turning 16. So I gave him that car, and then I went and bought a truck. And I remember being like, oh, cool. I went and bought my first truck. And now, having the mentality of buying an asset before the liability, I just so wish I would have learned that earlier, man.
I know.
Like, I went to Wayne State in Detroit. You're a Detroit guy.
Yeah.
The real estate down there, like I was living in this slummy apartment, and we used to make fun of our slumlord, guy that we rented from. And the, joke's on me. Why wasn't I buying some of that real estate back then? Because the real estate in that area, now that they got the little Caesars arena up and all that, I mean, it just has skyrocketed.
Crazy.
I know, dude. Absolutely wild.
Yeah, so, that's funny.
I know, man. Like I think back to those days, and I'm like, dude, how did I miss that? Like, how did I not have that vision? But time comes when it comes.
Right.
So, what brought your family to Detroit? Of all the places they could have come from Romania.
So I remember I asked my mom that, because I was like, out of everywhere you could have went, like, why didn't you go to like somewhere warm and nice? Like, why'd you go to like gray, pothole ridden, just
right,
Michigan? And like, nothing wrong with Michigan, right? It's a beautiful state.
Beautiful in the summer.
In comparison to other places you could go in the United States, I wouldn't rank it very high, right?
Yeah.
But
it's probably in the middle.
I'd say middle. Yeah. Middle's fair. But yeah, it was pretty much so. They ended up moving here because of the auto industry. Both my parents were engineers. My dad was a mechanical engineer, and my mom was a chemical engineer, and they had masters. So like the auto industry. And then the second was a lot of their friends that also moved to America moved here. Right. So they already kind of like knew people, and, it's a pretty crazy story. When we moved here, I think we moved here, we had like 3 suitcases, and my parents had like $3,000, and that went to the first car they bought. And from there, it was just hustling till, they were able to, get to where they were now. So
wow, man. Well, y'all, if you don't follow Teo, you got to go follow him. He's on Instagram at real Teo Bogdan, TeoBogdan. Go follow him. He puts out a ton of great real estate tips and content. So I'm real excited to get into that with you today. So, you went over your first real estate deal. It was literally just a buy rent. That's a deal I've done. I think it's a good one, especially for someone just starting out too. What are you looking for if you're doing a deal like that? You're not looking for a flip. You're not looking for anything. You're just looking for a property. Is there anything specific that you really need to look for, or is it really just to, crunch the numbers, make sure you can rent it?
Yeah. So I would say what I was looking for before changed to what I'm looking for now, right? But like looking at like that first deal, right? If that's what you want to do is a single family, I wouldn't even do a single family. I would just do like a duplex or fourplex because you can get financed the same way as a single family. So that's like one thing I would change. The other thing is if you're doing your first deal and you don't really know much, don't bite off more than you can chew. Just get that first deal done. And even if it doesn't cash flow a lot, like you want it to cash flow, right? You don't want to be in a negative, but I think a lot of people, so I go to like a lot of meetups because I'm always trying to meet like wholesalers, people that have deals like this and that stuff. And I've seen people just, I don't know, I've been doing this for like 6 or 7 years that they're still trying to overanalyze some shit, like to this day.
Right.
So, don't be that person. Just get that first one out the way. And, as long as the numbers work and, it's pretty simple to run numbers, you can hit someone up that's like in your market and be like, hey, I want to buy this. And does it work? Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is just get that if you're looking for rentals, right? If you're looking for rentals, just buy a house that, you can make $100, $200 a month in cash flow. And, obviously, if you do your calculation, right, with CapEx and vacancy and management and all that stuff, if it's included and you're still making that much, that's a great deal, get it done. And then after that, you
listen to Uncle G, Grant Cardone, he talks about renting where you live and not buying. One thing I wish I'd have done is done the duplex, fourplex thing and just lived in one and basically had my rent either drastically reduced or completely covered.
Yep. And
like, if you're young, single, whatever, privacy's not a thing, right? I'm a family man now. So we're, having some roommates isn't exactly the most attractive option. So, but in my young single days, man, like I'm kicking myself for not doing that. And most people think, they can't afford it. Or most people think, I need to save up some big chunk of money. The Dave Ramsey, save up 20% before you buy your first house. What do you think about that sort of mindset when you're going into buying real estate?
Yeah. I mean, that's like the perfect way to do it is like 3%, that's what you'd probably qualify for, even sometimes even less, right? Depending on what programs are going on.
But Teo, you're going to pay mortgage insurance.
Who cares, man? Who cares? Like, it was the same thing, that's funny because, and I know you're just like, joking around, but like, that's the same thing that I got with like quitting my job. Like, hey, why would you quit a 6-figure job? You have like a 401k and you have like health insurance and you have dental and you have like all this other garbage. Right. And I'm like, all right, so I'm going to sit here and be miserable just because, it's the golden handcuffs, right? You got a little 401k and a little bit of health insurance and, but it's the same thing in real estate, right? Like, don't even worry about that stuff. Because if you think about it, I don't know, let's call it like $150,000 house, $200,000 house. What's your mortgage payment on that? Like, I don't know, $1,300 a month?
Yeah, $1,200.
Yeah. So like, you get 2 roommates, you buy a 3-bed, 1-bath house, you get 2 roommates, charge them each like $600. Like, they're not going to find a place to live for $600. Like, right. So like, that's a great deal. You hang out with buddies, you drink beers with them, you watch TV, you play video games, you do whatever. Right. And you're literally living for free.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can rent out the basement. There's like endless possibilities of like,
well, and I like parents sending their kids to universities, right? They have them living in a dorm room. They're paying rent to some big university, right? Like if you're going down that path with your kids, highly recommend, if you're listening right now and you're thinking about some of this stuff, think about what real estate you could buy and turn into a cash flowing property. While, if you got a kid going to university, he can live there, right? You give him a nice place to live, make sure you can even help him hand pick his roommates, right? To make sure he's got some good people. He got a little control there, I think.
Yeah.
So, it's not a bad strategy. I wish I would have done that, in hindsight too. So as you matured in your real estate dealings, like what did you move on to as your next deals? Did you start doing flips? Did you, are you looking only multifamily rentals? What all have you done?
So right now, I pretty much it evolved from, so there's like a whole bunch of, I think, evolutions that I've went through real estate. So at first I was just like saving up money from my salary job. to get that another down payment to buy another house. Right. And like, you can't scale quickly like that. You can't, so that's when I was like, figured out like, hey, there's people that have money that they don't know what to do with to invest in, and they're willing to give it to me to make a return on it. And, it's a win-win. Right. So then I figured out like how to raise money, to buy rentals, and, cause then you're not just limited by how fast you can save up that 20-25%. Right. Then you're just limited on everyone else's money and, putting the deals together and finding the deals,
Right.
And then from there, I started kind of flipping houses, and, I still flip houses every now and then. I like try not to, but like, they just like sometimes come your way, and it's like, how can you like say no? Right. Cause it's just like easy money, I don't actually do any of the work on them. I just kind of have teams. So essentially it went from that, and then we grew into a property management company. So in a property management company that manages all my rentals, and we have maintenance staff all in there, and same thing. They service all the rentals. They help with the flips. They do, whatever is going on, that's going on. And then from there, we pretty much went to, now I'm mainly just looking for like bigger apartment complexes, right? So 50 and up, working on a few big ones right now that, trying to close up, and just kind of scaling from there. And also development, if we can find a piece of land and throw some apartments on it, we're also looking at that. So
cool. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
So when you do the flips, are you seriously just flipping it and selling it, or do you buy, hold? Like, what do you recommend people hold on to them or flip them? I mean, if you need quick cash, does it just kind of depend?
I think it depends on the house, and the area. So I don't really want any more like single families at this point. So I'll kind of do that. Like, I have a 4-unit that I bought that it was pretty run down and crappy. So that's going to get fixed up, refinance out, get my money back out, and I can just sit there and cash flow. Right. So it kind of just depends on the property. I think I did buy a house. Was it this year or last year that I kept as a rental? Just because it was like, I got it for cheap enough and it just worked as a rental, and I didn't want to deal with like the selling it. And so I think now I'm at the point where if a house is in a really nice area that I see a lot of upside in, that I see it keep going in value, and if it works as from a rental standpoint, like a cash flow standpoint, then I'll just keep it, but I'm not like actively going out looking for single families. Right. So I think it really depends on, when you start your journey, you kind of got to figure out like, okay, like how much money do I want to make a month? Right. And is that going to come from maybe like 8, 5, 10 houses that are completely paid off, that are just, I can live off of, or is it going to come off of like thousands of units? Right. So it just kind of depends on like what lifestyle you want and where you want to go. So I think that's like step number one, to figure out what you want and then go from there.
I think, you hear some of the big folks, again, like the Grant Cardones of the world, talk about the larger multifamily. And when you actually break down the numbers of those deals, you can see why they go after those deals, because they are, it's just the returns are incredible. You got Robert Kiyosaki and the folks talking about the infinite return and all this stuff. Right. But there's lots of ways to make money in real estate. And there's there's tons of people who own a ton of single family and make a ton of money, right? Different risk profile, all that stuff. I'm curious, as you have built your team, it seems like a very important thing as far as scaling is having a good team. Did you just kind of stumble upon your team, or how did you go about building your team of, I got my general contractors or whatever that can do my flips. I've got my management company that I've built. Like, how'd you go about building your team?
It was out of like really necessity, right? So I got to probably like 20 something rentals, and then I was like, all right.
That's units or actual properties?
Units.
Okay.
And I was like, it's very hard managing all this. Like, I spend my whole day, not really your whole day, but it feels like you're spending your whole day when you got to deal with calls, deal with this, deal with that. Right. So then I was like, all right, I need a property management company, because everything that I've seen from other like reviews on other property management company, no one's ever good enough. No one's ever right. So I was like, I'll just do it on my own, right? Build a company. Cause to be honest, no matter how good your investment is, with the wrong manager, with the wrong property management company, it doesn't matter. It could be a place that cash flows $1,000 a month. If you got the wrong manager in there, it's going to be just as terrible of a deal as the worst of the deals. Right. So that's kind of like the lifeline of real estate, right? Is the management of it.
Are they all long-term rentals that you have, like 6 months to a year plus?
Yeah. I have one Airbnb. I used to have two. I like the set it and forget it thing. Like when I was managing them, I know like everyone's names. I know like everyone's backstory. Now I'm at the point where like, I don't even know who's in there. I just know that it's filled and they're paying the rent and we're good. Right. So, with Airbnbs, it's a little bit more management intensive, but I did have a manager that managed it, but there's still a few more, things that are turning that need attention, but I guess the extra cash flow makes up for it. Right.
In theory. Yeah. We did our first rental. We turned it into an Airbnb just this year to try it, because it's in a pretty good location near downtown Houston. And, the first month it did exactly, a little bit above actually what we expected it to do. And it's, it was more than double what I was getting long-term rent wise. But to the management side, we hired a very good management company that does like 40 plus of these around Houston. And, we give them a pretty good cut, but they handle everything. So I don't got to think about it. And, there's definitely in the Airbnb world, there's definitely some higher risk, I guess, and potentially higher reward too. But
I would agree. I think the one thing that doesn't really get covered in when you see everyone like pitching Airbnbs, no one says that like, hey, you're probably going to end up spending like $8 to $10,000 on a place to get it decorated nice, to make it look really good. Right. Oh yeah. Because that's right. You got to have some sort of feel, some sort of vibe, some sort of, something that attracts people. Yeah. Just so even if it looks good in pictures, when they're there, they're like, wow, this is like really cool. Right. Yeah. Cause like the one that we have repeat customers all the time. Right. Because they come to visit family or they come for work, and they always like staying there. Cause it's like a industrial vibe, kind of like train.
What part of town is it in?
It's the most random part ever. It's in Sterling Heights.
Oh, okay.
So cool. There's like nothing there essentially, right? It's not like it's in Detroit or it's in like, a city that's like, popping, I guess, like Royal Oak or something like that. But it pretty much became vacant. And I was really good. And I'm really good friends with the people that manage it.
Cool.
And I was like, hey, you want to try it? And I was kind of just like joking around. They're like, I don't know if it works. There's like nothing to compare it to. I'm like, let's try it. It's vacant anyway. Let's see what happens. Right. And it worked out really well. I think it's been a Airbnb for like 3-4 years now. Yeah.
100% though. That investment piece, you got your down payment, whatever your 3 or 5% or whatever you can get it for. And then, depending on how expensive a place it is, it's going to cost you 10 to 20 grand for sure to
so that's probably
to furnish
like
it, right?
1,000 square foot place, right? But you need plates, you need I was going to say napkins, you need napkins and towels and like all this stuff, right? There's so many things that go into it, and you can't have like crappy things, right? If you're trying right, you want to have something really nice so people, right? Like, why would someone go to your place than a hotel, right? You got to be above a hotel. So there's a lot of things that I think the gurus don't like pitch. Plus you have like the run up time, right? So once you need to build your reviews, you need to build it, right? But once it's built, it performs really well. So, there's a little, maybe, I don't know, 3, I guess it depends the area, right? And how busy it is, but
100%.
There's a few months of like slowness.
So, it took us, we did a lot ourselves, but, trying to furnish a place over 2 months, out of hours, it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of time. And, you're floating a mortgage for a couple months with no renter. which was stressful. But yeah, I mean, it can make some good money. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think the model is like really sweet. So like right now I'm looking for if I find like anything on a lake, because I really want a lake house. That's what I would do for an Airbnb.
You got your eye on any lakes specifically? Michigan's got a ton of lakes.
Yeah, so Higgins Lake, Houghton Lake, and really any lake. It doesn't matter around the whole Michigan. If I can find a sweet place on a lake that I can like rehab, make really nice, and turn into an Airbnb,
That's awesome, man.
Be all about it.
I think so. Something you hit on, making the place nice. Lots of people think of real estate as like, oh, I'm just trying to get some cash flow or whatever. But the upside is going to even be greater if you can offer that really good service to the people. Having a management company that does really good, having a place that's furnished in a way where people show up and they're like, dang, this place is awesome. You might spend more in the front end, but I think that's a really just good takeaway if you're listening. Business mentality of how can I provide a better service than my competition is providing, and you'll just stand out, right? And you're gonna see rewards from that.
Yeah, no, dude, like I think you have to, right? You can't be, and there's a lot of them. Like I have tenants that move in and they're like, they tell me like the places that they are living in or were living in. And I was like, how that's crazy, right? There's just all these crazy things, but people are like, they're trying to like save $100 here, $100 there. But, I don't think that really gets you anywhere. You can really just charge more for rent. If you have a nicer place, you get nicer tenants, everything's a better experience when you kind of go above and beyond. And, and there's limits, right? Obviously, because if you go above those limits, you're not cash flowing anymore. And it's just, I don't know, you're not investing anymore. You're just doing weird stuff, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. Teo, I had a guy I was talking to, you had kind of touched on like the cash flowing piece, obviously you want the place to cash flow if you can, right? But I think there's so many hidden things in real estate. I met this guy, his goal was by the time, it was kind of like part of his retirement plan. It was by the time he retires, he wants 10 properties paid off. And he doesn't even care about the cash flow. That was the comment he made to me. He's like, I don't even care if they cash flow. And I was kind of like thrown back by that. But, it was one of those things where if you think about it, if you think about all, you're building equity in it, as long as the mortgage is covered and you're not losing money on it, eventually you're going to own that property. You're going to have a big chunk of equity. Property may appreciate. Like what other things are people not thinking about in that real estate equation? Most people are just thinking the cash flow, but maybe they don't really understand all those numbers or things they need to consider. What do they need to be thinking about?
So I think it depends on your strategy. I don't think that. Not to say that he's wrong, or everyone's got a different strategy. Like to me, my strategy is cash flow, right? I want cash flow because if I don't, then the money that I put into it is essentially dying in my eyes, right? If I'm not getting a return on the money that I have into something, it's dying. I know it's, you're paying down your mortgage, you're appreciating, maybe you're, doing all these tax advantages, all this other stuff. But to me, it's always cash flow. And all the other things are just bonuses. They're like the toppings on a cake, the cherry, all the other stuff on top of the cake, right? So to me, I always look at cash flow as number one, right? And then, so I got lucky when I bought a bunch of places in Royal Oak, right? And Royal Oak's gone like crazy, right? Like a lot of my houses have like almost doubled in value.
Yeah.
Right. But when I bought them, they worked as rental properties. They cash flowed. They were great, right? The reason that now they're worth way more money, that's just a bonus, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how I see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely have like depreciation. You definitely have like the tax advantages. You have all these other things, but I think those are just like the cherry on top of the cake, right?
Sure.
It's not the whole cake. I think the base of the cake is the cash flow, and everything else is just, bonuses. But right. So like, I see why people would want to, I guess you don't care if they cash flow. If you have a really high paying job, you could like float it because you're going to have repairs. You're going to have tenants that, do stupid things. You're going to have, a sewer line that goes bad. That's going to cost you 10 grand. You're going to have a lot of crazy things, mostly as you expand and get more rentals. Right. So, I don't think you want to, float, 20, 30, 40 houses if something bad happens. Right.
Yeah.
So, that's why it's super important I think to, bet on that cash flow. But, he's right. Because after they're all paid off, you might have, who knows, $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million, depending on the house, sitting there in equity, right? That he could probably pull out and use for something else. Plus he's going to be getting rent. So, everyone's got to pick, whatever investment strategy fits what their lifestyle and what kind of money they got coming in or out or whatever works best for them,
Yeah. 100%. Man.
That's the cool thing about real estate. You can make it, fit your thing, right? Your thing that you're doing. So,
you mentioned earlier, you've gone into investors funding your deals. And so this is something that I've heard guys like Robert Kiyosaki say, you're not a true entrepreneur until you can raise capital, which I thought was kind of an interesting mindset. How do you go about finding investors? And, I guess for those maybe saving their money right now, we're entering potentially a period of hyperinflation. We've seen, numbers in the 6% plus range recently. What is the real advantage as a hedge against inflation, maybe, to get your money? If you do just have money sitting around, you're busy working, you don't have time to deal with real estate, maybe you want to be an investor in, one of Teos deals or Phil Swanson's deals. Why would that be valuable to you if your money's just sitting in a bank right now with all this potential inflation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole that's a whole thing, right? About what's happening with our money right now, right? And how they just keep printing more and more of it. And the $10 you saved last year is not worth $10 anymore, right? So, and it's hard to tell what that actual number is, right? I think it's that $10 is probably worth like $750, right? But yeah, so I'm always a fan of making your money work for you and not letting it sit there. I think the way I was able to and am able to raise money, I just do deals, and people, it's like an organic thing. It's like weird going to ask people for money, kind of, right? It's not like weird, but it's like it's better when someone approaches you and they're like, hey, I really like what you're doing with your rentals or with whatever you're doing, your flips. How can I do it? Right. And then you just tell them how you do it. And they're like, oh, that kind of takes a lot of time. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of does. But, and they'll be like, well, I just have like this 50 grand or 100 grand that's like sitting here that, I've been thinking of, doing a flip or a rental with. And you can either partner with them, or they can just be like, hey, like, I'll give you this and I'll get X amount of return on the back end, or, that's an infinite way of like structuring it too, is stuff like that too. So I think that's probably the best way to do it, is to just kind of, put out there what you're doing. And, people see it and they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And, even if they ask you questions and they do it on their own, like, that's fine. It's just more people, that you kind of help out to get out of whatever rat race or whatever they got going on,
Yeah, man. 100%. I think like your videos you put out on social, giving people free tips. You hear a lot about giving people value, free advice these days. And you hit on a great point, because these people, they're going to hear you tell them all the work that's involved, because, it's not get rich quick or get rich easy in real estate. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and you got to know a lot. And man, there's a lot of ways you can really, really mess up and get in a bad spot too. So, people can hear some of these things. And I heard someone talk about, Teo, every video you make on social is like hiring another salesperson, which I thought was an interesting mentality. It's like, you put this out into the world and you don't know who's going to see it, 5, 10, whenever, months from now. And, it's a really good mentality, just thinking about adding value to people. And then you start getting, I've kind of experienced it naturally too. You start getting people coming to you, asking you questions. You almost get deals brought to you like, hey, here's this deal. Teo? Like when did you have that point in your career where people started just bringing you deals?
I think it was, well, I've definitely gotten deals for my videos. I don't think I like started doing the videos. It was more of a challenge that I was part of. And I was like, well, I just do real estate, so I'm just going to make videos on real estate. Right. And then that was just one of the byproducts of making the videos and sharing, like, you know, what I do every day. And here's like, you know, what this house looks like before and what it looks like now. Here's like the crazy things you got to deal with tenants, right? Here's the, you know,
I've seen some of those ones.
Yeah. So those are always fun, you know? But yeah, so I think it's just, you know, you just kind of put it out there without really expecting anything. I selfishly, I don't even know what the right word is. Selfishly, maybe selfishly. I selfishly did those videos to like improve my speaking and the way I like present myself. Right. And the outcome was, you know, getting deals and, you know, people trusting your opinion on certain things. Right. And I did the same thing, like, in the previous years, I ran a meetup, and same sort of thing came out of that. Like, hey, you know, like I came across this deal. Is it a good deal? And, you know, I'd sit down and like help them run some numbers on like a multifamily property or something. And they're like, okay, cool. And they'd be like, I don't have money for this. Do you want to partner up on it? I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's do it. You know? So I don't know. I just see like, you know, just helping people in general is like my main mission, and whatever like comes out of it. Right. There's like no expectation for anything to come out of it, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome, man. Are you only looking in the Detroit area for deals, or where are you focused, or are you open to deals outside of the state of Michigan?
As long as they're big enough. Right. So if it's anything outside of Michigan, it'd probably have to be like 100 units and above. But mainly, I'm pretty much looking everywhere, wherever there's deals. I'm looking for them. Right. It just makes it a lot easier, you know, in the Metro Detroit area over here, just because I have the property management company. So it's easy to take something over. It's easy to get units turned. I have contacts to, you know, do whatever needs to be done to any of those places. So, but obviously that all those connections can be made in other states too. But it's just hard without, it's not really hard. I wouldn't say the word's hard. Like, to me, it's, if I were to scale outside of Michigan, I'd want to see, you know, a bigger property for it to make sense for me, you know?
Yeah. 100%. You know, I think going back to the inflation comment, you know, one of the main things that really good for people to think about is, you know, with interest rates where they are right now, you're acquiring it, you know, if you use debt to acquire the property, you know, you're getting debt at a super low interest rate. And then if the dollars devalue, then you're paying off that debt with devalued dollars. And so with that mentality in mind, you know, you really have a super good hedge against inflation, even if you're just parking money in you know, one of Teos deals in real estate. Right. So, you know, if you got money in the market, right, you know, I don't know about you, Teo, but I don't know anybody. I know they're out there. There's got to be people out there, but I don't know many people who are like, yeah, man, I got rich because I have a 401k. Like, do you know anybody who talks like that? I've never heard anybody say that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Have you?
I'd probably laugh at them now.
Like, I just haven't heard. No, I'm not saying a 401k is a bad thing, but, you know, I just don't know anybody that got wealthy without doing something, either owning equity in a business or owning some sort of real estate or hard asset. Like, I just don't. What do you think about crypto? Is crypto a hard asset? Are you in crypto at all?
I am. I'm very heavily into crypto. I'm actually working on a mining operation. So I'm a huge believer in crypto. I'm a huge fan of crypto. And I think a lot of people they just see like, oh, I can buy this dog coin for 2 cents and then it'll go to $1 and I'll be rich. Right. And you know, that's probably what got me into crypto, right. A few years ago, and looking at the value of we as a people being in charge of our own money and not anyone else. when you kind of see that value aspect of crypto, that's, I think, when you're like, all right, this is 100 times better than what we've been using so far. Right. And, but yeah, I'm a huge fan of crypto. I'm a huge believer. I have a lot of money invested in crypto and mining and everything else. So,
wow.
Yeah, I looked at it from an investment standpoint as of, similar to real estate, right? So let's just say you put 100K down into some mining hardware. Well, you're going to get your payoff if everything stays as is within a year, sometimes less than a year, right? Looking at that from an investment standpoint, there's literally nothing that has those kinds of returns, right? And granted, right now we're in a crazy bull market. Sure. And, things are going to change in a bear market, and the risk, right? Real estate's like, you can't even see it, right? It's basement floor. Crypto's like, 10, probably 100 stories up, like, so, but I think it's good to kind of hedge against everything, right? So have your kind of be invested in different businesses, and, kind of once this business goes bad or goes to, maybe a bear market, you can go, you got this one that maybe goes to a bull market, so it kind of just balances out. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of crypto.
Cool, man. I haven't dipped my toe in yet. I had crypto wizard Joel Cleland from our society on the show. He's over at Centric, and he was teaching me a little bit about it. I think that mentality of just cutting out the middleman is what might do it for me, is kind of just seeing the value of, direct payments and not having to go through some third party to just exchange money.
I think crypto for me, and I think for everyone, it's since Bitcoin goes and like it kind of has its like 4-year cycles, right? With the halvings and everything. You probably have to go through like one of those cycles to actually like understand it. Cause when I first got into it, I was like, all right, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to get rich and things are going to be great. Right. That's not really how it was. I was like trading it. Right. And I've learned that I'm not a good trader. Right. I'm a very emotional trader. So I'd like buy it and I'd sell it and it'd still go higher. So I was like, I'd buy it some more, but I'd buy it at the peak and then it'd dump and I'd sell it. And it was just a disaster. Right. So I was like, all right, no more of this buying and selling shit.
No more gambling.
No more gambling. Right. Just buy it and hold it. And like, once you do that, I've read a lot of books on like money, how money works, how banking works, how like our whole system works. And I've really done a deep dive on understanding Bitcoin. I think everything else is kind of like there's different utilities for everything. And, it's a really huge topic to talk about, but I'm a really big believer in like Bitcoin, right? So like when you read about it and see like how smart Satoshi was for how he developed it and the way it works, it's just like, it's mind blowing and it's like really cool, so yeah. And I think it's hard. So like I can go into a room and try to like convert people to like, orange pill them, right? To bring them to the dark side of Bitcoin, right? But it'll never work, right? Because I'm sure people try to do it to me. And same thing with real estate, right? Like I've tried to tell so many of my friends to just buy the fucking house and rent it out or do this or do that. And they haven't done it. And then like a few years later, they're like, hey, I think we want to buy some rentals, right? Yeah. So it's just like one of those things that you have to like figure out on your own essentially, right? And that's like what it was. And that's like what Bitcoin is. And that's what real estate, that's what all this stuff is, right? You have to like figure it out, do your due diligence, read on it. And if it clicks, it clicks, right? If it doesn't, it doesn't. So
yeah, I think that's a huge takeaway for anybody listening. You don't really start learning either. Like you could read books all day, but you don't really start learning until you actually start doing some of these things. Yep. So I don't know anybody who doesn't wish they started earlier in real estate or investing. So Teo, with that in mind, it's been super fun, man. I know you got to run and you got some meetings and stuff today, so I won't keep you. Gary Vee shared some perspective a while back, and it's been this thing I've always asked most of my guests at the end of the show, with technology today, you don't know who's going to see this years down the road. Like I might have one picture of my great grandpa, or maybe one video where I could see him in a wheelchair or something in the old folks home when I was a kid, and I don't even remember. Right. But, imagine seeing Uncle Teo talking with Phil and, great great grandpa Teo. What would you want to leave those generations with? If you could leave them with something today, what would you want to leave them with? Just thinking that you don't know who might see this down the road.
I would say quit overthinking stuff and just kind of go for it. Obviously do it with enough education to know that you're kind of making the right decision. Because knowing what I know now, I wish someone would have told me to quit engineering. I wish someone would have just told me not even to go to college and waste my time. Someone should just tell me like, hey, instead of like spend so much money on college, you could own like 10 houses that would have been worth who knows how much right now. Right. So like, and it doesn't have to be real estate or anything, right? It has to be what you want to do. So pick that thing that you want to do and like go for it, right? Like do it in a smart, educated way. So that way, if you do fail, you have some ways to pick yourself up or, but just pick that one thing and get after it. And the time's never going to be right. The sun's never going to shine the right way. The, stars aren't going to align. You just gotta get up there and do it. And then it'll work itself out. Right. When I quit my job, I thought I was going to go one direction. I kind of went a different one. So if you're hungry enough to, get after it, it'll work out.
Great advice, Teo. I appreciate you coming on, brother. Y'all go follow Teo at Real Teo Bogdan, TeoBogdan. And he's putting out some good stuff. Teo, thanks for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate the conversation, man. It was an honor. Hope to see you soon.
All right, y'all. You have a great day. Go lead everything.